knowing the show is called Canada Watching US News, knowing it was based off of this idea of us peeking out from behind the curtains, eating ketchup chips and butter tarts and Nanaimo bars, watching what's going on down south. I said Nanaimo bars for the BC people.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And, that idea that we're kind of like sitting above it all. But of course we're not. We're, some of our butter tarts aren't good. Some of them have pecans and raisins in them. And those ones get sent south. My name is Brittlestar, not really.
And I'm Sandy Garasino, really.
And this is Canada Watching US News. Yet again, Sandy, someone has tried to assassinate former President Trump, at least allegedly tried to assassinate former President Trump. And the thing that has stuck out to me the most about that so far is that my own reaction was, And the general reaction online and in media has kind of been, yeah. As Shannon pointed out this morning, she's looking at the Toronto Star and she said she's got Eugene Levy and Dan Levy on the front page, and the day after it happened. And then I think Trump's thing was a tiny little bit in the front at the bottom. And to me, it showed the power of words, both good and bad. It showed the idea that, you can incite people to do things with your words. You can also tell them to distrust words. And then maybe later kind of hope that they don't distrust all the words as well. It's bizarre to me. Like, what a situation to be in.
What a terrible thing. It's the face-eating monkey is eating my face story comes to mind. There's an aspect of this. I want to pursue what you're saying, Stuart, but there's another aspect of this, which is I believe that the information was released by the Trump campaign. And I say this because having a little bit of knowledge of security and very highly sensitive security, there are a lot of situations that are never, ever publicized, that don't come to light. And I would, someone was speculating, why haven't there been any attacks on Kamala Harris or on Biden? And I am pretty sure that there have been a lot of things that have been intercepted, but campaigns don't put this information out. Law enforcement will always tell you, do not publicize these incidents because you get copycat.
Yeah.
And to a certain extent, this could well have been a copycat situation. We know the danger of copycat. So that's just my one comment, which is that the shooter, the person with the guns, did not take any shots. He had a gun. He was in extremely dangerous proximity to the former president, but no shots were fired. And I'm just that's just a little posted about this, is that the campaign put that information out, and they put that information out at a very sensitive moment. So, not saying that they were creating something out of nothing, but I'll bet you there's a ton more of this than is ever publicized. But this was a very opportune moment to have a crisis about the safety of the former president.
That's a really valid point that I hadn't thought of, was the idea that, of course, you're exactly right. And it totally makes sense when you sort of take a breath, step back and think about it, is that there's no way you would want to reveal that much information. You wouldn't think there's any benefit to revealing that much information, rather, because it just shows these types of incidents, which are very scary and very dangerous. And it's terrible that they happen. They shouldn't happen. You're revealing chinks in the armor. You're revealing vulnerabilities. You're revealing tactics. You're revealing strategies. And that's not good for anybody. That's just, it's not safe for anybody, and it's not a good idea. So that's a part that I hadn't actually thought about, which is fascinating. The part as well, to me, that was also fascinating was the fact, again, like I said, that this happened again. And there's been not a huge amount of, there's been coverage. There's absolutely been coverage, but not panicked, breathless coverage.
The coverage is about the Secret Service, isn't it? The coverage is about the protection. So that's another That's the lead story in the New York Times today was scrutiny of the Secret Service and
Hmm.
Biden commenting that Congress needs to fund Secret Service more. But no, there hasn't been the breathless. I mean, God, we remember, don't we? I mean, I remember the Reagan.
Oh, sure. Yes.
And Gerald Ford and
No, I don't remember that one.
yeah.
But Reagan for sure. I mean, it was a massive deal, and it was. I mean, I was quite young, and because I'm still very, very young, and I just thought I'd slip that in there.
And you look at
That's exactly. It's probably the
that's
shirt.
important thing.
It's probably the shirt. But I remember at the time with Reagan in 1980, it was a huge deal. It was a massive deal. And this is the second in as many months, attempts in as many months, and everyone's gone, but is that purely because, I think it might be, purely because someone like Trump has sown so much distrust in the media, air quotes, whatever that means, that you hear these stories and you're like, I don't know. Like, are people just totally desensitized to that stuff now, do you think? Or is it a case of we just don't trust the media anymore? Or is it we don't trust anybody anymore?
Well, the Republicans are certainly whipping up amongst circles that we're not part of. It's certainly being played up as a big deal. And also, but this is also an environment in the United States where a school shooting barely makes the front page anymore. The murder of children in their schoolrooms is not front page news anymore, very much, thoughts and prayers. I do want to make one comment, one additional comment, which is I think that while the information was first released by the campaign, I think, obviously there's been much more statements coming from law enforcement and Secret Service and all the appropriate agencies. But yeah, I think that it's just deep sigh. Deep sigh. Someone that I know in the United States had a child murdered in their driveway like 2 weeks ago. I mean, this is just this is America. This is America.
So it's we think it's a blanket desensitization as opposed to a specific distrust. It's just kind of like there's so much stuff happening. We're so aware of it that we can't possibly process it. So we're just kind of not going to process it, which I'm not positive I totally agree with, because I think that I certainly don't want this to happen. But if it was on the other party that was getting targeted, I think it would be huge news. I think it would be massive news. I think it would be handled really, really differently. I doubt there would be an almost immediate fundraising campaign built on the back of it. I think that there's just so many things where I think it's more than just desensitization to me. It's very much a boy who cried wolf thing where it's that idea of, everything's terrible. Don't trust the media. Trust them. Trust them now. Trust these stories now.
Yeah.
And I think people are just largely apathetic. I think they've just tuned out.
I'm going to push back on that, Stuart. I don't think people are apathetic. I think they're not sure how to process it. But I think you might be right. I mean, one of the things that's so interesting to me is that it's not, for instance, front page news and a massive, massive story that there were two schools in Springfield, Ohio, and a university that were shut down because of shooting threats against the students as a result of because of the fury that was whipped up by Trump at the debate, and then repeated by J.D. Vance, who's now admitting that he had to lie on CNN yesterday. In an interview with Dana Bash, he admitted that he did have to he had to lie, because if he didn't lie, then nobody would believe him. So this is where we are. I mean, a week ago, Stuart, we were laughing at this debate. I was just almost rolling joyous. I was falling over in my chair in hilarity at Trump saying these ridiculous things. And now we have a university shut down, children in danger. There's a terrible sense of foreboding that something terrible is going to break out either in Springfield or somewhere else. And a community festival was shut down on the weekend in Springfield because of fears. I mean, these are dire times, and the lying just continues. Like there's nobody backing away from this.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it a combination of JD Vance's statement of, sometimes we make stuff up so we get attention, combined with, I don't even know what to say, or that idea that you're just constantly saying things. There's so much information. There's a few things at play here, I guess. There's so much information that people can't process it. So people are just self-preservation essentially in that kind of mode. There's the idea that there's sown this idea of distrust in the media anyway. So, and just distrust, period. So why believe anybody? Combined with JD Vance saying his thing, making stuff about it, and then making lies up to get coverage in the news, get attention. How have we arrived at a place? Now, I'm not expecting you to answer this specifically. This is an unfair question for one person. But how have we arrived at this place where we've never had more ability to share our words with the world as easily as we do now? But we seem to have lost all realization or all awareness of the weight of those words, especially some folk who are in higher places. Like I think recently with Trump on Truth Social saying, "I hate Taylor Swift," all in caps with an exclamation point, which is at first glance hilarious. He might as well have said, "I hate Justin Bieber" in 2010. It would have been, it just doesn't, I mean, first of all, it's not your audience. So who cares? And secondly, who cares? However, then when you think about the position he's in, you think about how his words have incited other acts of violence and dangerous situations. How can you be so negligent to just say, it doesn't matter, I'm just going to put this out there? And then secondly, how can you look at someone who does that in a position of power and say, yeah, I trust those guys' fingers on the button? I don't get it at all. Answer.
Because there's so much information and nobody, like people aren't, we're not going through the process or the general public. And even a lot of journalists, I mean, part of this, I think that one of the consequences of having a journalism industry that is in a tailspin and so many thousands of journalists who have lost their jobs, not only in Canada, in the United States, we don't have coverage because we don't have reporters. So the coverage tends to be whatever Elon Musk is tweeting or what Donald Trump, like they are the headline creators. And so they're creating the news that they choose unfiltered. And, this is such an obvious statement, but it's unfiltered. It's a direct message to their followers, to people who support them, who are in thrall of them, who want to please them, et cetera, et cetera. But the actual news, one of the reasons we don't see a lot of coverage of things is because we don't have reporters. We don't have reporters because Google and Facebook have destroyed the news industry. And so now we have just a massive soup of information, and everybody is getting basically the information of their choice. So a lot of people won't even see things that they're not. We see what we look for. We see what we look at. That's why cameras are important. Anybody who's been around a major event, you can see what the cameras are looking at is a little narrow frame, and they fill it up, and that fills up your television sets. And then what's going on around often has the real environment, there's virtually nothing happening, but the world's focus is on what that camera is seeing, because we're visual creatures. So the visuals really matter. And I wonder if that's one of the other things that is why this story of the golf course assassination has not resonated in the same way as the shooting at as the shooting of Trump and other people who were killed at his rally, which is because we saw it. We saw him. We saw it fully. This story there wasn't really a visual aspect. I mean, this is how much our information filtering. I mean, we're just animals. We're just little monkey brains with eyeballs seeing things, and what we see is like way bigger than anything we read, way bigger than anything that we can process. If we have to read more than a headline, it's just I mean, most people aren't reading more than headlines.
I've never felt so seen. You're mentioning about how Google and Facebook ruined the news media, and I agree. I don't think that was necessarily their intent. It's certainly what happened, initial intent anyway. And I think as well, the idea that, you've got a dearth of reporters, and you have that because everybody is looking online for information and what's best next. It's a scroll culture. We're all kind of moving through it and trying to get as much information as we can, as fresh as we can. And we want something new on every pull down on that feed. And you can see that some people really kind of play into it, of course. And again, it speaks to the power of words, and also the idea that people are looking for what they're looking for. They see what they're looking for, which is a great quote, by the way. So excellent, well done on that. It was really good. That's exactly it. People like Laura Loomer, who fantastically on a Walter Masterson, who's a very funny comedian and somewhat of an online troll, as it were. Like he makes videos at Trump rallies and all that kind of stuff. He interviewed Laura Loomer, and she referred to herself as the most banned woman in America. And then, of course, he said, "Where can people get your book?" And she said, "Barnes and Noble." and then said, "But definitely not Amazon." She's like, "Well, Amazon as well." But I mean, apart from that, she is totally banned. But this idea that you've got these characters who are kind of rising up is fascinating to me, because how do they, I don't know how to articulate this properly. I was going to say, is there a way for legitimate news media to capitalize on the same tactics that people like the Laura Loomers of the world are using? I mean, I guess they kind of do in a way. They try to.
So what are you thinking of? You're thinking of something, and I'm not sure what it is.
Well, listen, I mostly look Sandy, so this is what you get. The idea being that there's such a distrust in media, yet there are people like Laura Loomers in the world who have poked their heads up and become somewhat successful.
Because they're iconoclasts. They're going against the institutions.
Right.
So the distrust of news institutions creates an opening for very bad faith players to say, "See, you can't trust the news. Trust me. Trust me. I will tell you what's really going on." And I mean, the dangers of that particular person who is, I mean, what's amazing to me is that the Republican Party seems to have hit a bottom. They seem to have found their voice, that we can't cope. We can cope with Marjorie Taylor Greene. We can cope with Matt Gaetz.
Yeah.
We can cope with everything. We can cope with the lying. We can cope with the incitement. We can cope with absolute madness, incompetence, and corruption. But we will put our foot down at Laura Loomer.
Well, to borrow a term from the Republicans, they're not sending their best. They're not sending their best.
I'm just astonished because, I mean, how many times in the last 9 years have we heard there is no bottom? But apparently there is.
Keeps going. It just keeps going. It's amazing though, because it's that combination of, to go back a bit, it's a combination of people who are in positions of power, people who are in positions of influence, um, being cavalier with their words, and then people who support those people, even though they're kind of looking for it. There's got to be an element like this. Surely there's someone who's a supporter of Trump looking at "I hate Taylor Swift" and going, "That's probably dangerous." I don't think that's a good thing to put out. And I mean, are there those people? Do they exist?
Well, we're starting to see more. We're starting to see more and more people coming and saying, "No, we can't do this." I don't know how much yet. We haven't yet seen an institutional Republican response to the dangerous things that he's doing now. This incitement in Springfield, I think we're probably going to see
Right.
more statements. There have been more sort of what they call rhinos, Republicans in name only, people who, people like the Cheneys, now George Bush's former Attorney General Alberto Gonzales, who's famous for his defense of the waterboarding and the
Right. Right.
enhanced interrogation practices. But he has found a bottom, and he has said that Trump, he has now come out to oppose Trump's disrespect for the rule of law, which is kind of ironic for Alberto Gonzales. But we're starting to see more of this kind of institutional voices. I've yet to see a real voice talk about the danger, the real threat, and I think that people are, a lot of those people are just in a bit of shock, and how it's manifesting is the horror. By people like Lindsey Graham at Laura Loomer. I think that they're trying to blame her for
Sure.
this complete meltdown of any kind of common sense. Should we talk a bit about who Laura Loomer is
I would be delighted to. I'd be delighted to.
and where she comes from? And by the way, everybody, there's a Canadian angle to Laura Loomer because Laura Loomer, like the Proud Boys founder Gavin McInnes, like the person identified in the Russia propaganda indictment about the millions of dollars going to disinformation propagandists in the States. Lauren Southern was a person who was identified in the Department of Justice, U.S. Department of Justice indictment. Like Jack Posobiec, who is a big MAGA supporter and Mike Flynn supporter, and who has in the past spread a number of propaganda issues that were identified as being Russian disinformation campaigns. Like all of those three other people, like Faith Goldie, who is the person who got the video at Charlottesville of the car crash where one of the counter protesters was killed, Heather Heyer. Like all of those people, they all are former Canadian Rebel Media alumni, and Laura Loomer is well known in what is called the alt-right, which I would call right-wing extremist voices who are spreading propaganda and disinformation and just she creates media events around herself. When she got banned from Twitter, she handcuffed herself to one of the doors of the Twitter offices. Ezra Levant, it's reported in Wikipedia that Ezra Levant, who was one of the founders of Rebel Media, registered a free lauraloomer.com website 6 hours before Laura Loomer created a scene and disrupted a New York, a performance of Julius Caesar in New York, and had to be arrested and carried away. But hours before she did that, the Rebel Media founder registered a free Laura Loomer website to fundraise off her arrest, because an awful lot of this is about fundraising.
Right.
So anyway, that's my little blitz about the Canadian connection, and now she is apparently on quite intimate terms with the President of the United States, or the former, shall I say, the former, beg my pardon, former President of the United States of America, Donald J. Trump. Yeah. Sorry if that took too long.
No, that was perfect. That was great. Yeah, uh, I I keep going back. Well, first of all, you're right with the Canadian connections and stuff. You know, knowing the show is called Canada Watching Us News, knowing it was based off of this idea of us peeking out from behind the curtains, eating ketchup chips and butter tarts and Nanaimo bars, watching what's going on down south. I said Nanaimo bars for the BC people.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. And that idea that we're kind of like sitting above it all, but of course we're not. Some of our butter tarts aren't good. Some of them have pecans and raisins in them, and those ones get sent south. But there's obviously money to be made. There's obviously I was going to say, I don't know. I was going to say there's a thirsty audience for it. Maybe it's not even a thirsty audience. Maybe it's just the type of content that it is, that it probably just fits really well into the existing algorithms. It works really well for becoming sticky, quote, air quote, content. So it's the kind of content that platforms want in a sense, because it makes people stick around, and they can sell them more ads and all that kind of stuff. But I keep going back to the idea that I don't understand how people are such bad judges of character. Like, I always make the joke about how, did all these, remember Future Shop? Do you have Future Shops in BC? I can't remember if you
Yes.
didn't. Yeah, okay.
Yes.
And they would sell the extended warranty with everything. Do you want the extended warranty with that? It's a toaster. It costs $12. Would you like the extended warranty? It's only $98 for 12 months.
Yeah.
And there'd be people who would be like, yes, absolutely. Seems like a fair idea. And you're like, no, it's a terrible idea. And because even if you had the extended warranty, it was a hassle getting any sort of coverage and all that kind of stuff. The Venn diagram of Future Shop extended warranty people and people who are bad judges of character is a perfect circle sometimes, I think, anyway. And I don't understand it. With an abundance of information, how do we not, even though we have not enough reporters, we have lots of media still. And I don't understand how you have all that stuff at your fingertips and you still have this huge group of people who are unable to see that people are just either idiots, they're malicious, malevolent, they are just plain bad folk in general. And I don't understand how we're missing that. I don't understand how we're getting to that point.
Well, I think, a lot of it is because there's just so much information. I was just recently down in the United States, and I was actually I had a couple of conversations about the election. One in particular stands out in my mind because this is what I would call a low information voter. Interestingly, a Black woman. I was asking her, well, what do you think? I would say she identifies more around in the law enforcement type of bailiwick, and she was she was couching carefully what she was gonna say, but it came to, well, I kind of really like Donald Trump, and so I was asking her, so what do you like? What appeals to you?
Yeah.
What's the appeal here? What do you like? Well, he's good at business, she says, and I would say, oh, that's interesting. Even though he's gone bankrupt like 5 or 6 times, even though he inherited like $500 million, but he still went bankrupt like many times. He used, oh yeah, well, I guess there's that but I mean, one of the things about someone like this, this is someone that I know reasonably well and I like a lot. And this is one of the things when we hear, oh, America is so divided. Like, a lot of these people are working together. They go to the office together. They have coffee together. They have lunch together. They laugh. They have learned not to talk to each other too much about politics because it's too upsetting. It's sort of, and I think that people aren't that divided. There's a bit of laughter about, oh, well, I'm going to watch that because you're on this team. There's a little bit of that team fan thing that's going on, but a lot of people we call them low information voters as if they're stupid people, but the reality is they're not paying attention, and their impressions are way more powerful than anything else. So Donald Trump has spent a lifetime projecting himself as a powerful,
Yeah. Yeah.
savvy business. And these are people, they don't know how to read a financial statement. They don't know how to read an income statement. They don't know profit and loss and all of this kind of thing. They just go, why, again, this gets back to we're all, and really we are all kind of monkeys with eyeballs, and we're influenced a lot by what we see. And the visual is extremely compelling. And that, oh, he's a business guy. He's a big business guy. He
Opulence,
must know.
helicopters, airplane, the whole bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that it's all the trappings of what he's rich.
Yeah.
And he's a business guy, and that's his identity. That's his brand.
Yeah.
And that brand, this is brand power. And it's extremely powerful for people who are, a lot of them are too busy. They've got other things going on. They've got moms they've got to take care of. They've got to pick up their kids. They've got to deal with, who knows what's going on. The dog's got to get to the vet. They don't know how they're going to pay their mortgages.
Right.
And their goddamn grocery bills are going up and up, and the rent has gone up. And how are they going to pay the rent? Like that's, I don't know that these are stupid people. These are distracted people with actually, a lot of them have much higher priority things on their plates than who's going to win an election that they're going to have almost zero impact on.
I had a phrase that I would hang on to a lot when this is about 20 years ago when we were running our business where we'd do marketing stuff, and I would say, never underestimate the stupidity of the masses. And it wasn't to say that the masses are stupid, the people are just generally stupid. It's to say that they are so incredibly numbed and distracted that it's very difficult to get information into their heads because they are, exactly as you said, they've got higher priority stuff to worry about. These aren't people who are stupid. These are people who are dealing with a million spinning plates. I also make the analogy of, people, everyone's treading water. Everyone's in the swimming pool. And they're all trying to stay afloat and no one can touch the bottom. And it's a little scary, but as long as you tread water, you're okay. And you've got a bunch of people around the side of the pool with signs saying, read my sign, read my sign, read my sign. You're like, listen, just throw me a life preserver. That's all I need. Whoever's got a sign with a life preserver, that's who I'm going to be with. That's who I'm going to spend my attention on. And, I think you can see the appeal of someone like a Trump with the guy standing at the side of the pool, drying himself off in a robe with a nice cold drink going, I used to be in the pool, but, I'm really rich now and I never get wet anymore. I'm fantastic. You'd be like, I want to be like him. It's frustrating because exactly as you said, these people are low information, but they're not dumb. They are just incredibly distracted. And I'm not sure how you break through that wall. Like, I don't know how, because it's exactly it. And you see this woman you were talking to saying, I like Trump. He just seems like a successful businessman. And you're like, where have you been? And I get slightly, because
not paying attention is where they've been.
Not paying attention, but it's also a case of, as you said, people who are in real life, people are having lunch and dinners and hanging out with people who are, someone's voting for Democrats, someone's voting for Republicans. And the same all over the world, especially traveling through Canada this summer, realizing that we'd go places that were pretty notoriously conservative, and it'd be like, people are nice. People are fine. There's not a problem with it. People are lovely. They'll take anyone in. They'll do the right thing. They'll be good people. But there must come a point, or there must be some sort of line, I would think, where you'd be like, well, now we're not talking just about a difference in policy here. We're not talking about how we pay off the debt. We're now talking about human rights. We're now talking about, women's rights. This is, how do you poke through that wall where to sort of go from that, it's not polite to talk about politics, and get to a point of like, I know it's not polite to talk about politics, but you know what? Woman's right to choose is pretty important. So we should maybe talk about it. I don't know how you get there.
And I don't know. One of the things I'm wondering about, this is one of the things that I think about, Stuart, is what really influences voters. And I think that we think, because we read news and we kind of like, well, what's going to be, what's the consequence of this policy, and how is that going to dovetail with this, and where are we going to find the money for that, and that kind of thing. Like, that's not actually how most humans think or solve
Sure.
problems. I think a lot of us are, and I'm curious to know what you think, because you were going across Canada, you were talking to lots of people in lots of communities, and one of the things I wonder is, are we influenced more by what our friends are doing and what is there a tendency, do we have a bias, shall we say, to generally agree with the people that that are like us,
Mm.
and if those people think that this person is stupid, well, then that person is stupid. And one of the things that really strikes me is how much and how easily I bought into that Kamala Harris is not going to have any
Oh,
chance. She's a
same.
lousy candidate. She's unelectable. I was saying this after I had been a supporter of hers because everybody else was saying it. And then out she comes. Here we are. We're the talking heads. We're supposed to be experts. And
Yeah.
I don't know anything. And I'm just influenced because all the other people that I like are doing it. How much do you think that's a factor?
Yeah, I do. I think, the saying goes, everyone wants a quiet life, right? Everyone wants their things to run smoothly. And there's no point. I mean, I've been in conversations with friends before that, for example, something about religion comes up,
Yeah.
and suddenly there's opinions that you had no idea existed before. And you're like, oh God, all right. I guess this is the way you think now. And I'm not sure how that affects our relationship. I don't think it really affects it that much, but it does create friction. You're like, well, let's just not talk about that anymore. Let's just not do
Yeah.
that anymore. If
Yeah.
if somebody speaks up with something that everyone agrees with, everyone's like, yes, we belong to this group now. We're part of this unified
Yeah.
view and this unified perspective. Um, it's, it is a little bit of that, but I do have to say I don't know what the threshold is between, well, first of all, I don't know where the divide is between having an opinion based on what your social circle has an opinion on, or the people that you admire have an opinion on, compared to people who don't read any news, don't consume news, and are based on the tiniest amounts of information. And to that, I say I responded with the question that I don't know where the threshold is, because to be honest, for me, to be totally honest, I read the newspaper every day, but I don't read the newspaper every day. I take cursory glances. I might see something that's interesting. I'll read a headline.
Do you read a physical newspaper?
A physical newspaper, because I'm a million years old.
I don't.
And well, just don't rub it in. Just because you're high tech, you don't have to rub that
No,
in.
no. This is bad. I think a physical paper is good.
It's a bit of a pain in the ass getting it delivered sometimes, but apart from that, it's all right. But I will read the physical paper and I will go through headlines in each section. And if there's some story that's interesting me, I'll read the first couple of paragraphs. If it's really, really good, I'll skip ahead to the end. And if it's really, really, really good, I'll go back and I'll read it through. There's a threshold of which it's I'm not spending my time devouring every single printed word in the paper, but I feel like that must be I don't know how far above your average Joe I am in media consumption, but maybe that is miles above. I'm not sure.
I think it's miles above. I think it's miles above. One of the things that I notice whenever I pick up a newspaper and I'm leafing through and reading it, I am really struck by, if I was online, I wouldn't see this article.
Yeah.
Because it wouldn't show up in my feed.
Yes.
The people that I know wouldn't be sharing it. But this is important information, and I wouldn't have seen it. I actually, kudos to you and everybody out there. We should be getting newspapers, and we should be reading them because there is information in there. And I would count you as you are in probably the 99.5% because you're getting a physical newspaper that you're reading.
Well, I mean, I am pretty great. But yeah, I mean, it's I don't know. It's just that idea that with the newspaper specifically, in its most distilled sense, the newspaper, I always think it's going to sting a bit for someone to print misinformation. They still do. They still might. And you have to be smart enough to figure that out. But it's going to be a bit of a pain in the ass for them to print it, and it's going to sting a little bit because it's going to cost money for them to do it. It's kind of like looking at the people that do the Epoch Times. To me, it's good luck, guys. I don't know how you're going to make money, but you are, maybe. Maybe you don't have to. And I think that there's that power of the word aspect comes back though, where it's like you read something and you see something on newsprint and it's got impact.
Yeah.
If the headline of the Globe Mail, for example, or the Toronto Star says something disparaging about Trudeau or disparaging about the Liberal Party or the Conservatives or whatever, regardless of how I feel, I think, oh, that's got some weight. Let's get some weight to it.
Mhm.
But we're still at this point where now there's just so many easy ways for you to share your words, and they've lost all meaning in a sense. But at the same time, for a select few, they're still really, really, really powerful, and that's scary to me. I think because they're so cavalierly used.
I mean, there is so little self-consciousness about people who should absolutely 100% know better. How JD Vance, who has a wife and children, and who is suddenly thrust into a situation where security is now a critical importance to
Yeah.
his children.
Yeah.
And for him to be so cruelly, unfeelingly cavalier about the children of other people, it's just astonishing. I mean, you and I watched that debate. We saw Donald Trump make an absolute jackass of himself. They're eating cats and dogs. They're eating the dogs and all this. And we were laughing our heads off. But 70 million people, more than 70 million people watched that. And millions of people believed him. Millions of people believed him. And millions of people were outraged and appalled and angry. And the other thing about social media, and I think that this is just generally also a North American or maybe a Western trait, we got to do something about it. You know, like this is I noticed this with a lot of the protests about, you know, major events going on all over the world, is that we're going to do something about it. We're going to go down and we're going to march and we're going to do this or that. And this is our job. We're citizens. We're supposed to do something we're going to do something about this. And you take that to millions of people watching Donald Trump say that these horrible illegal migrants
he's dehumanizing them, you know,
are, you know, like it's unbelievably powerful, and it's easy for us to forget how powerful they are.
I mean, I always try to think twice when I'm tweeting or something, you know what I mean? I always try to sort of think to myself that there's because nuance is not social media's specialty. It's not social media's forte. You need to be very clear about what you're saying, and right down to, you know, one of the things, Andre Picard, the health writer in the Globe. Andre's a great guy, super nice guy, incredibly smart. Andre, if you're listening, dear God, put quotes around your tweets when you're sharing articles. It looks like an endorsement. It'll be some crazy headline that he's sharing. Obviously, to be like, guys, look at this crazy headline, but it looks like he's saying it. But that's just the power of words in the sense, and the medium it is now. Do you think it'll change? Do you think we'll get better at it? Or do you think humans are stupid and we'll never get better at it?
For years, I've been thinking, this has got to be as bad as it's going to get. Surely now everyone will have learned their lesson and it's going to be better. I've thought that for over 10 years.
That's adorable.
And I've been wrong every single time. This should be, we should call this podcast We're Wrong.
We're just that'd be easier.
We're wrong.
Yeah. It'd be
but listen to us. Nice flat we're caveat. Wrong, but listen to us.
Yeah.
Because what we're saying is important.
It's important, but we're still probably wrong.
It's important wrongness.
Yeah. It's important you understand that the disclaimer is the title. That's exactly. Well, that was pretty good. I mean, I don't see much hope sort of change, but I guess that's not true. I won't say I won't see much hope. That sounds so pessimistic. I hold out hope. I don't feel very confident in the amount of hope that I am able to hold out that people will understand the power of the words. By people, I mean people in power. Some Joe Schmo tweets out something. Who cares? But someone who's in a position of power, who have people who dote on their every word, as I said before we started recording, for the people out there in the world who try to find meaning and interpret things from posts right down to trying to find, what does kofefe mean? It means this, obviously. It's like there are people who are hanging on every single syllable. And when you have that much power, as Uncle Ben said to Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. And we should all listen to Uncle Ben. That's basically it.
Listen to Uncle Ben and be careful what you share online. Yeah.
Thank you so much for watching and or listening to Canada Watching US News. Of course, you can find us at CanadaWatchingUSNews.com, where you can subscribe for email for free to get the audio version and get a notification every time we go put out a new episode. And you can also, if you're a paid subscriber, you get the video episode. You get to see my shirt that I'm wearing today. If you're not paid subscriber, you have no idea what my shirt looks like unless you looked at the other post. But if you didn't look at the post yet, then you don't know what it looks like. We really appreciate all the support, and there have been a few comments come in, and at one point where if you've got comments, add them to the Substack post there or the Apple Podcast post, doesn't matter. And we'll make a little show about questions and stuff that we can be wrong about.
Yes, ask the wrong people.
That's the segment. It'll be you've asked the wrong people. That'll be the name of the segment. Thanks so much, everyone. We'll see you next week. Take care.
Bye, guys.
The audio version of Canada Watching US News was produced, engineered, and edited by Owen Reynolds. The video version of the podcast was edited by Lisa Cumming. Our theme music is by Owen Reynolds. You can find past episodes and more at CanadaWatchingUSNews.com or your favorite podcast platform.